Hi, I'm Irina and this is the objective of this experiment. The objective is to determine the coefficient of the static friction of the different surface. Theory. Force and velocity are vector quantities that have a magnitude and direction. Force is it when the object accelerates or undergoes in a chain is there is two types of friction, which is kinetic and static. Static friction is the friction that acts on the object at the rest. The maximum value of this static frictional force is given by force of static friction equal to coefficient static friction and the normal force. Kinetic friction is the friction that acts on a moving object.
Hi, my name is Nurul Aina Sumaya, and the apparatus we'll be having for this experiment is wooden block that rubber covered at one side, 50 gram masses, 10 Newton spring scale, string, and tabletop.
Hi, I'm Islin. So the first step in this experiment, we need to measure the mass of wooden block and record as M. Next, we need to set up the apparatus like in this video. After setup, we need to make sure the tabletop is stable and horizontal to the ground. Step 4, we need to attach the spring scale and the wooden block with a string placed horizontally on the tabletop and make sure the rubber side of the block is downward. Next, place a 50 gram mass on the wooden block. After that, pull the spring slowly. If the block starts to move, record the spring scale reading, record SFS, and repeat step 4 until 5 for 3 trials. Add another 50 gram mass on the wooden block and repeat step 5 to 6. Add another 50, repeat step 1 until 8, but in this time, make sure the rubber side on the block is facing upward.
Hi, I'm Hannah. I will show you guys the result for experiment 5. The first result is for the rubber surface towards the floor. As you guys can see, we are using the wooden block with mass 0.08232 kg. And all the unit, we are using unit kilogram. In this experiment, we are doing 3 trials and get different average every time we put 0.05 kg of masses. For the second result, where we're not using the rubber surface anymore, but we are using the same masses, which is 0.05 kg until 0.50 kg, and the result will be like in the table.
For the analysis, the first analysis is to draw and label the free body diagram of the wooden block. At the top of the wooden block, we have normal force, and at the right bottom of the wooden block, we have frictional force, and at the bottom, we have weight. And for the left of the wooden block, we have force. And the second analysis is to plot graph of static friction force against normal force for the rubber surface. We have drew two graphs, that is rubber and non-rubber surface, based on the results we have got. Third analysis, use the gradients obtained from the graph to calculate the coefficient of static friction for each surfaces. For rubber surface equals to frictional force over normal force equals to 4.93 over 5.97, we got 0.87. For non-rubber surface, we got frictional force over normal force equals to 2.33 over 5.67, and then the answer is 0.41. The fourth analysis is to compare and discuss the coefficient of static friction obtained. So to compare is coefficient of static friction of rubber surface is higher than non-rubber surface because non-rubber surface have lower frictional static force than rubber surface.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Nurina Huda. So question 1. How can anti-lock brakes stop a car in a shorter distance than regular brakes? Anti-lock brake system helps to stop a car in shorter distance on most of the road condition as the whole setup, hardware and software. The car speed sensors give the anti-lock brake system the necessary information to determine the slip difference in the velocity of the whole car. Number 2. From your experiment, which material has the highest coefficient of static friction? Does this agree with your hypothesis? What do you think determines the coefficient of static friction? The answer is wooden block with rubber surface has the highest coefficient of static friction. Yes, this agree to the hypothesis. When the rubber moves over the smooth surface, it causes the friction from the forces between two of them. Coefficient of static friction can be determined by placing two objects together and fit them until the top on one side, then take the value of the forces just as the object starts to move. The resistive force of friction, Fr, determines the coefficient of static friction. Number 3. Once the mass begins to slide, does it move smoothly or does it undergo stop and go motion? Explain the motion. The mass undergoes stop and go motion. When the object is slowing down, the acceleration is in the opposite direction as the velocity. Thus, this object has negative acceleration.
To conclude, the objective of this experiment is achieved were to determine the coefficient of static friction of different surfaces, where the rubber surface gave the bigger coefficient of static friction than the wooden surface.